Today I'm speaking with Spencer Cornelia. Spencer is a well-known YouTuber. He has gained millions of views for uncovering shady tactics in the world of self-help, pyramid schemes, online marketing gurus, and his biggest hit so far, a series where he analyzes something much closer to home, the music industry. Today's conversation is my honest attempt to shine a different type of spotlight on the highly profitable, constantly growing, and sometimes sinister world of get rich quick. I consider Spencer a cultural critic and a skeptic, but believe it or not, he is someone who exposes these things from a place of empathy. He's someone who really seems to care about those who are filled with ambition and passion just trying to make it. On a personal note, this year has been incredibly hard, and I was not interested to speak to a skeptic for the sake of skepticism alone. The real reason I called Spencer is because he shines light on what he views as predatory in an effort to protect vulnerable people. Finally, to celebrate the new show, I'm giving away a PlayStation 5 to a viewer. All you have to do is like this video and subscribe. That's it. Details in the comments. Now, please welcome Spencer Cornelia to the Welcome Home podcast.
My goal is to end the charlatans, and my theory on how to end them is a very aware consumer base.
In 2021, with all the free information we have on Google and YouTube, why and how are get-rich-quick schemes so popular with so much information debunking them?
I don't know how familiar you are with this, but this has been going on for 30 years. There was like these Tom Vu, they used to sell these seminars and they would sell infomercials about, I got rich in real estate and so can you. It will always exist because it preys on people's emotions. It's not a knowledge thing. It's the same thing with weight loss. Everyone knows how to lose weight. Why is America struggling with it so badly? And that's why it becomes difficult, because when emotions kick in, logic goes out the door. And so you could probably argue that my theory of an aware consumer base might not be the best strategy to stopping the charlatans. But yeah, that's why. There's no amount of information that can stop these people. It's the same thing why athletes keep going broke. The information's out there. The problem is once you have it in you, once you have the money in your bank account, your emotions change and it throws logic out the window. Same thing with in regards specifically to the fake gurus. When you have consumers that lose their job, or they with COVID, maybe they did lose their job or they lose their main income source. Now all of a sudden the emotions kick in of, I need to make money. Now you are vulnerable to the messaging that these gurus use. Same thing happens with, you could be in a great loving relationship for 3 years. Then all of a sudden you find out she cheats on you. And now you are very vulnerable to the guy that's like, you can get your dream woman. You want to make your ex-girlfriend jealous of you? Sign up for my program. It's because emotions kick in.
Something I find kind of fascinating, self-help has been mainstream for a century, probably, with $20 self-help books. And you mentioned 30 years ago there were seminars, but there's this shift that changed the game, whether that is YouTube ads, Google ads. Has these online advertising platforms created the spark of the modern guru?
I think so, because of the ease with which it is to get your message to millions of people. YouTube ads are reasonably low cost for the amount of attention they get. And if you can convert, like Tai Lopez, in a video, I did a video on Tai Lopez, and one of the clips I used, he said something to the effect of, I've spent 60 million on advertising. Well, it's because he sells a product, these guys sell a product that can receive a return immediately. And so if you start spending 10 grand and you make enough to make 10 to 15,000 back, you just put that back into the ads. And if you do have the funnel that's pretty tight enough to turn a profit, as long as you're making $1.10 for every dollar you spend, you can essentially scale to the moon. And when you're talking 10, 20, $30 million in ads, within a year, you could have a large segment of YouTube's user base familiar with you.
As we're recording this, the conversation of censorship and platforms is pretty hot button and it's trending. Where does Google sit on regulating highly predatory advertisements?
It's a great conversation and one that is a lot more nuanced because I have my views. I believe what I'm doing is correct, right? But everyone has that same belief. If you're a scammer, you believe you're doing great for the world because you're selling these courses that are great for the user base. So when everyone thinks they're correct, who gets to decide who's right and who's wrong? Who's the gatekeeper? And that's where it becomes dangerous because I personally believe I'm helping YouTube's user base, right? By unveiling these scams. But who's to say that there's someone out there who disagrees with me and would just shut me down? So if you allow for censorship, you have to understand that it could go against you. And that's where I get really uncomfortable with silencing. That's why I accept all criticism because I just wish we lived in a world where we could criticize one another. We could have open dialogue. I do think what's going on with some of the censorship, I'm not knowledgeable enough to really give an opinion, but there's a line, and it seems like some people are crossing it where it becomes dangerous, where you start riots and whatnot. But it is a very, very, very slippery slope because you are allowing for gatekeepers, and gatekeepers are generally not a good thing.
Your theory of the cure being awareness is one side, but I'm kind of a nerd when I read about AI and maybe the future of healthcare. But there's also a future if AI advertising gets really good in 5, 10 years. These ads can know exactly how to how to target people in a predatory way. So in 5 to 10 years, do you think the awareness that you're offering is going to make a dent, or do you think the rise of even more advanced AI ad targeting is going to turn this to a much larger problem?
That's really scary. I've actually never even considered that. But yeah, what you're indicating is like if the guru can essentially change their sales pitch. So because
Live.
most of the effective sales pitches are, hey, you want to start a podcast? I have the solution. Well, if you could target if hey, you just broke up with your girlfriend, I have the solution. Hey, you just lost your job, and you could make it individual for the millions of people watching. I have never considered that, so I haven't even thought of this. I don't know if I don't know if my strategy is the best one. That's what's scary. Is I'm going about this the best way I can. I definitely get positive feedback, such that I do see plenty of messages. Hey, I almost signed up for this course. Watching you has definitely opened up my eyes. So I get plenty of that feedback. But am I really making a dent? I don't know. Here's my goal for the long term though, is creating such a large platform where it becomes inevitable where the guru essentially has to either respond to me or has to address what I'm criticizing. Because what I do is not unethical, and I'm not doing anything that would warrant legal action. So when I come out and just say, "Hey, this is unethical," according to the FTC, what you're doing is a get rich quick scheme. This is not legal. If they don't respond to me, I want to create an environment where 500,000 people see it and they go, "Well, that kind of tells us what we need to know." And you can end them that way.
I assume if you are truly proud of your product as a guru, you'd welcome the opportunity to come on your show. So that is a brighter, more optimistic outlook where maybe you become the gatekeeper for certain quality standards.
I would love that. I'm just imagining, picture Joe Rogan. Like you think of his influence and his power when he was on YouTube. Imagine if he made a video criticizing someone. It just said, "Hey, I don't appreciate this advertising, don't appreciate X, Y, and Z." And then that guest would come on and address the criticism. And if they did not come on the show, then it kind of tells everyone, "Hey, this person isn't comfortable addressing some of the concerns."
So one of the I find it probably too easy to criticize some self-help books or some courses. A lot of upcoming artists ask me for advice, and I see them getting preyed on for $100 ebooks that are really not going to help them. I see people selling how to get on Spotify playlists when they don't know how that actually occurs. But there's this elephant in the room where I'm very easy to criticize a $2,000 course about marketing, but I don't know if colleges and universities, their courses are maybe as valuable with YouTube and Google offering so much free knowledge. So, in your eyes, do you contrast those two, the course versus college? And in 2021, do you think college is as valuable for entrepreneurs or the business space?
Courses are really valuable. It's unfortunate that I still think it's a small minority of people that are kind of ruining this course business, because I know a few people that are entirely legit and sell courses. And in the history of books, now, okay, I'm a little ignorant on this. Maybe there are a lot of people, there's a lot of charlatans selling books, but just for the sake of this argument, a lot of people would spend 20, 30 years and then they would have super success in one targeted field, and then they'd write a book about it because they just didn't have the time to meet with everyone. Here, buy my book for $10. This is all I know. Unfortunately, now with the ease with which it is to create a book or create a course, you now have less barrier to entry so that you can enter the scammers. And for the courses that can be valuable, the reason why I focus so much on the person is because most of the courses are fine. Even the worst gurus, in my opinion, probably create courses that are okay, can at least get you started. Because let's be real, you could teach me all you want to know about the music business. You could teach me every single chord to play on a guitar. You could teach me everything to do with electronic music. At the end of the day, I have to sit in my room and actually become good. And so that will never change, whether it's college, whatever the medium is, I don't think it matters. And so that's why I focus so much on the guru itself. Is this person an authentic guru? Are they actually doing what they're selling? Let's look at the sales pitches. Let's make sure you don't become vulnerable to these sales pitches, because, course, college, whatever you want to call it, it's a form of education. However you want to value, it's up to you. I'm not really in this fight of like, is college worth it? It's so more nuanced than, do you just sign up and get a job out of it? There's the first time a lot of people are on their own responsibility. It's a weird environment where a lot of people can get in trouble and get a taste of getting in trouble, but not really have it affect their life. Some people might get like a drunk ticket. You get drunk in public, but like you don't go to jail. It's like they slap you on the wrist. You get, you're in a college environment, so we'll let it slide, but don't let it happen again. Or, you run out of money for the first time, but like your parents consented a little to you, or student aid will help you a little bit. So it's like a testing the waters of getting in trouble.
I'm curious to see what your perspective is on the idea of luck, because a lot of these courses may be high quality, but the results they're preaching have a bit of luck involved, at least in my opinion. And even in music, like you mentioned, there is a lot of, I guess, lucky moments that I can't tell you how I met this one person or why this song did what it did. So I always kind of grapple with in my head when I'm alone with, why was I lucky in that moment? What went right? So what is your stance on how luck is involved?
I love talking about luck because I think it's way more prevalent than anyone willing to admit. So humans have a really weird psychological issue, and that is we will always attribute success to talent, but failure to bad luck. If we failed, it was like, oh, well, the market tanked or COVID hit. That's why we failed. But then when we succeed, it's like, oh, man, I just knew. I have eyes towards the future. And so I think many successful people will overlook luck because we want to attribute it to talent. But luck is so prevalent. Now, I do think that everyone has the ability to succeed. If in your specific industry, I would imagine you share the same belief. If someone put in enough work, at some point they will be good enough to have a hit or to earn a gig or to have some type of sustainable living if they put in the work long term.
I believe that if you put in the work long term, you can have a sustainable living. But I've seen people that have put in the work that didn't have a global hit, weren't 7-figure a year touring acts. But I do have that belief, and I could sleep at night saying, if you put in 5 years, you're gonna pay your bills off this.
Yeah, and then so what I see is success, whatever you want to define success as. Most people would say some type of base level of income, you can support yourself from your career, you can live an enjoyable life, that's success. I think everyone can reach that in some specific field given a long enough timeline. But the exponential factor of success absolutely has to do with luck. Some of the biggest wealth, the highest net worth individuals we have are factors of luck. Right? You look at some of these guys that made a bunch of money. If you read their biographies, it's like their parents had money. They had access to something that no one else did. They had the ability to drop out of college. It's just they were born at the right time and they had the right idea. Now, they deserve all the success and whatnot, but the same thing can happen in any field. I think the degrees, the exponential factor, the person that separates, or the thing that separates someone that earns $2 million in their life versus $20 million, sometime is a relationship that just fell in their lap, or they were born in the right family, or they had the first real business pursuit succeeded, whereas the other person, it was their third. The little things like that.
This kind of leads into survivorship bias. I watched your video, The One Thing Gary Vee Has Wrong. And
Yeah.
I'll admit, when I was a little bit younger and really, really hungry, I followed his YouTube and his Instagram, and I really liked the idea of hustle and you're gonna figure it out. And as I've matured a bit and had a couple painful moments and got to see certain industries how they really are, I started to feel a little bit uncomfortable with the message of hustle, hustle, hustle. So, can you explain that video and your views on the Gary Vee phenomena?
Absolutely. I was a little disappointed that some people didn't understand the point of the video. I think because I did use Gary Vee, they were immediately like, "Oh, you don't understand Gary Vee." It's like, dude, I've been watching Gary Vee for years. And the premise is I wanted to teach survivorship bias through Gary Vee because I felt like he was the perfect parcel of, the perfect medium to tell the message. And essentially, survivorship bias is we focus on the attributes of someone that broke through some type of barrier. And right now it's succeeding financially is generally the main principle. Is people who made a bunch of money, they'll say, I worked hard. I didn't go to college. I worked hard and I created a business. But it neglects all of the people that did those exact same principles and didn't succeed. And so we're talking about maybe the 1% of people who succeeded, and they talk about work hard, hustle, and all this, but they're missing the nuance of what it actually takes to succeed. There's a bit of luck. It's the right timing. You need to be good at whatever it is. I could hustle for 16 hours a day at basketball. I'll never be good enough to play in college or the pros. And so there needs to be a pursuit that you can actually win at. You need to put in the work, and you need an element of luck.
Do you think people are really attracted to Gary Vee because it almost silences that conversation of luck, where it makes you feel a little bit better to say, well, if I just hustle, it's all going to be okay. I don't have to worry about certain circumstances. Is that why he's become so popular? And for me, at probably 20 years old, thought he was like my idol.
He's really good at motivation. And so I think what he has done really well and why he succeeded is he gives you bite-sized motivation for 5 or 8 minutes. And look, I listen to that stuff too, even though I don't think it's that valuable. Because every now and then I need to turn my brain off and I need some type of validation that what I'm doing is right. When I was doing YouTube for 5 years and not having any success, no one watching my videos, it is nice to turn to Gary Vee and he says, hustle for 10 years, don't expect success for 10 years. And it's like, okay, it's a form of validation from someone who's actually earned his chops. And so I think that's where he succeeds. Now, the downside is this toxic hustle positivity movement that exists where a lot of youngsters, a lot of people in their early 20s get on Instagram and they see all these guys with the flashy suits and how I earned $1 million by 26 and you just have to hustle and put your head down. And I don't know. I just think life is way more nuanced than just hustling. Like, what does that even mean?
Absolutely. And talking about motivation and almost like motivationpreneurs, I really believe that self-development is not a bad thing. People are struggling. People want to do better. They want to be healthier. They want to be more confident. There's nothing wrong with meaningful self-help, but I do know there's a line that gets crossed, whether it is self-help addiction. When does it go bad for people? Because I'm a firm believer that trying to improve yourself is a great thing, but I've seen some people cross that line.
Yeah, agreed. I think the issue is my big issue with self-development, self-help is it's not measurable and very little is practical. And so let's say you had a friend that needed to lose 10 pounds. They're like, I need to lose 10 pounds before the summer. If 3 months later they were still following the same people on how to lose 10 pounds, you go, okay, let's reanalyze this because it's not working. The problem with the self-help is it isn't how to lose 10 pounds, right? That's a very measurable and practical thing. If you've either done it or you haven't. But how to live, how to be successful, how to enjoy life, you can't measure it. And so you can find yourself in a circle because the underlying principle of self-help is that you aren't where you want to be. And so if you keep going to those books, you'll read a book and then the next one's about how to live happy life. And then you finish it and the next one's how to be more positive. It's like, you keep finding yourself going there should only be one self-help book in the history of the world, right?
Yeah.
After it, you should find success. Whatever it is it's trying to preach, there should only be one. But yet there's 10 million that get published every year. That should show a flaw.
I always find it fascinating, the new run of best-selling self-help books every few months. As I've gotten older now, I've started to have the philosophy of if the book didn't last the test of time, it's probably not as valuable or it's probably just being regurgitated. So as I've gotten older, I've looked for books that have been tried and true for 25 plus years or longer.
Absolutely. And one thing with the books that I've thought about is what's really hard about life is at some point, what's the phrase? Like the rubber meets the road. Like at some point, you have to sit behind your computer. You have to start making music. For me, you have to produce YouTube videos. There is no, you can watch all the courses you want on how to find the video, whatever. At some point, you have to speak into a mic and make a video. And I think that is the really uncomfortable moment. So I think what books can provide, and by the way, I'm a huge proponent of reading books, but the problem is at some point when you read that last page, are you the type of person that puts the book down and says, I'm going to apply every single thing in the book? Or are you looking for the next book? That's where it becomes a problem. When that moment hits, when you have to actually start producing, are you going to produce or are you going to look for the next book to read?
You also find out that it's very messy to actually create things. There's
Yes.
a lot of personalities involved. There's a lot of things that can happen. So reading a book, I mean, I've gotten a lot of value from it, but it gets a lot messier. And obviously, the best experiences or the best lessons I've had in my life came from incredible pain, big failures that were public, not a book. So there's a lot of value in the mess of experimentation.
Yeah, you could write a book, How to Play a Las Vegas Nightclub. You could have a step-by-step formula. It could be really well written. But at some point, someone's going to have to put down the book and go, okay, step one, he said to do this. I've got to do it. And it's likely going to fail for a little bit, and I got to be comfortable with it.
Absolutely. So when I was doing research for today, diving into this world, there's a huge fan base for people that are fed up and angry with these gurus. And I'm going to get in trouble, but there was one name that just kept coming up. And I wasn't familiar with this person, but I'd watch a video, someone saying he was a scammer. I would read an article, scammer. I'd go on Reddit, scammer. And I wonder if this person is an easy villain or if there's something unique about the situation. You've covered him a lot. This person is Dan Lok.
Dan Lok. I really, really dislike what he does. I think what these guys do is they create this image of success, this huge persona. And then it's not that hard. Like, okay, let me backtrack. It is really hard to do what they do. I'll give them credit for building an actual business. That's not easy. Even if you want to be the worst scammer in the world, it's not easy. But they build up this persona. On Instagram, it's this business expert. You dress well, you look the part, you talk the part, but there's no underlying business being ran. And I think that's what Dan's guilty of is you can make claims. I mean, this is the playbook is out there. If I wanted to, I could make claims about being this real estate expert. I've done all these flips because all you have to do is watch a few videos in a specific industry, get an idea of what it sounds like. You basically regurgitate it. You don't ever have to show proof. That's my whole thing with transparency. The real theme of my channel is more transparent social media. And I think that helps kick everyone out the water. If you can't show your actual success, then who are you?
I guess where I was confused why is he such a target? Is it because he was so popular and successful, or were there unique circumstances where he did some really shady things? Because he's almost an anomaly in this world of being talked about.
He is an easy target. Having more followers for sure helps with us. If he had 30,000 followers versus 3 million, it definitely would not be covered as much. That is, an ugly part of what I do is certainly going after the big dogs helps me out. So that's, if you want to expose me, it's like, yes, of course, I go after people with bigger names. So that's definitely part of it. He does kind of have like a cult-like following. For him, it's just, he does so much shady stuff. There's been instances of him copying content. There's plenty of instances of using manipulative sales tactics to upsell people that shouldn't be paying, right? If someone came to me and said, I want to get into real estate, teach me, and I gave them a price. This is what my time's worth, X amount of dollars. If they only had X amount of dollars, it would be incredibly unethical for me to take their money, because then I would know that they couldn't actually go buy real estate, which is why they're paying me to mentor them. And so a lot of these gurus will charge a certain amount and then they let everyone through the door. Hey, you can learn how to run this business, which needs advertisement money. It needs, in some of the instances like ecom, it needs inventory money, but they'll charge $10,000 to someone who only has 10,000, or even worse, puts the 10,000 on a credit card. And
Wow.
when you start adding up all of these instances of just unethical selling, there was also a video where I broke down one of his speeches on stage at a Jason Capital event, and he stands up in the crowd and basically, he does it extremely well. He's a very, very, very skilled speaker, and I'll give him credit for that. But the speech he gave was so well done in a manipulative manner that he basically gets up on stage and has already primed them to think that they're one course away from making 100K a month. And he just says, hey, if you want to spend 7,000 on a course and it could guarantee 100 grand of earnings in 30 days, would you do it? Everyone's like, yeah, of course, of course, of course. So then what comes 15 minutes later? Oh, his $7,000 course. And so those types of tactics, it's just, it puts them over the edge.
It's fascinating because I guess health and finances are the only two industry where you don't have to disqualify any customers. Everybody wants to be healthier. Everybody wants to generate more
I'll
income.
give you a third: getting paid, getting laid,
Oh,
and losing weight. Those are the three.
what are your thoughts on the dating gurus? Because I know that there's a big rise in that.
Very, very, very ugly industry. I used to spend plenty of time in that place, in that industry, just as a fan. Like I used to follow RSD. I used to do cold approach pickup for 6 nights a week, multiple hours per night. I was deep into that game. It's it's similar to the other industries, right? You can make crazy claims. It does apply to nearly everyone. I mean, even if you're married, you can't tell me that you're not going to see an ad with a hot chick and just say, "Hey, here's how I started having threesomes with this beautiful lady." I mean, what guys can be like, "I'm not interested," right? So you can use these claims that are going to get everyone interested. So the fishnet essentially is huge, right? You can basically apply it to everyone, and you can target certain inherent needs within us. Is your lady not giving you the sex you want?
Did you gain any value in your real deal business life or on your YouTube, whether it was like confidence from these like pickup or dating coaches? Did it actually improve your business?
100%. Yeah, it was a great experience. I was a huge fan of RSD, which I know some people give me crap for because now they've kind of shifted. It's a totally different company. Plus, there's been some shady stuff they've done for sure. So I'm not ignoring that. But I was back in the game in 2013, 2012 to 2015, around then. Yeah, there's something so amazing about having the ability to walk up to a girl that you find attractive, get her to laugh, get her to joke, get her to open up, form some type of connection and bond, whatever the outcome you want. If you want to get her number, date her, marry her, whatever, and be able to succeed, whatever your success metric is. There's something about it because within us men, it's so difficult for us to get over that leap of going up to a beautiful girl in a bar or in a grocery store and being able to start a conversation, get her interested in you, and then get her number. And when you get that, the confidence that you receive is through the roof.
Your YouTube channel has been critical of a lot of people. Have any of these guys threatened lawsuits or have you had legal stresses over your YouTube channel?
Yeah, I'm paranoid all the time. That's
Oh, wow.
why I've kind of shifted a little bit. Like I don't do only the authentic or charlatan. I try to spread it out. Like when I do one of these real exposed ones, I try to go a few weeks taking a step back because 3 copyright strikes and your channel's gone. And some of them might throw copyright strikes your way, even if it's abusing the copyright system. That's what Bam Kevo did with me not too long ago. And so I got to be careful with that. I received 3 cease and desist letters from lawyers
Wow.
last year, which is less than I was anticipating.
In the US, Canada, I mean, I'm Canadian, but in the US, you're allowed to speak critically. Is that correct? Or is
Absolutely.
does defamation affect their business? Is that what
Yeah,
they're arguing?
absolutely. Fair use is a very gray area. It's very case by case basis, and that's one of the reasons why I try to stay very neutral. Is I don't want to jump into defamation or libel or slander. What I try to do is I essentially use things that the people say or do, and I can point to it and just say, hey, over here he did this, over here he says this. They don't match up. That's all I'm trying to do, so I can stay away from the defamation or slander. Yes, if I did come out and I was affecting their business by slandering their name, absolutely, it opens me up to legal ramifications. I'm not too concerned though. The worst I receive is cease and desist. Where I'm at now, it doesn't make sense to fight them just because of the amount. It probably cost me $1,000 to respond with a letter from my lawyer, and the videos don't make 1,000, so it's like what? It doesn't make any sense. But in maybe 6 months or so, I will go back to just saying, what, for the health of the long term, I'm going to fight them, even if it doesn't make sense financially. I'm just going to fight them and keep them up. But
Wow.
yeah, right now that's the word. By the way, like when it comes to legal, I've received a few emails from people like, "Oh, I'm looking to start a channel. I'm so worried about legal action." It's like, dude, in the US, it takes so long to ever be worried about legal action. If you get a cease and desist letter, you just take down the video if you're in the wrong. If you're in the right, then just leave it up and see what happens. It takes so long to actually reach a lawsuit.
I found it fascinating as I was doing research for this. I guess typically if I'm buying a product, I would look at the reviews. And we've as a society have these review-based systems where we could trust high quality products. And as I'm doing research in this world, you realize that testimonials are either fake or forced, and the review system is completely false.
Yeah. I really, really, really dislike reviews for online courses. Also, to be fair, there are plenty of people in life who could take the best course. They could go to Harvard and call it a scam. 1 out of 5, teacher didn't know what he was talking about, right? So I don't think it's fair. Even the fakest of fake gurus, I don't think it's fair because I could go and hire VAs to write 1-star reviews for someone if I wanted to basically ruin their reputation. And so I don't think that's fair to them. The same thing with Yelp. Yelp will have a glorified 5-star restaurant or for whatever the highest tier is, the best steak in the world. And someone will have a slightly not perfect experience and they have to let everyone know that it was a 1-star. There's no way this place is a 5-star. And so that's the danger is you leave it up to humans to give reviews, and humans can be biased. They can also be incentivized to give bad reviews or good reviews. In the case of fake gurus, a lot of them are fake 5-star reviews. I don't think it's a good environment to have the review sites, which is unfortunate.
You mentioned earlier that you were doing YouTube for 5 years, no growth, no one cared. I was making music for 5 years, no growth, no one cared. I wanted to ask you about the YouTube game because you have grown incredibly fast. I'll watch one of your videos and the algorithm will start spitting them out. I subscribe and I've seen you now reach over 100,000 subscribers. My question for you is, can somebody grow a YouTube channel still in 2021 and grow as quickly as you have?
Depends on the niche. I think it's very niche driven now with how saturated it is. Now, let's say hypothetically in music, can someone grow 100,000 in music? Yes, but do they have the marketing behind it? If we're assuming no ad spend, can someone grow 100,000? It would be very, very niche dependent because it needs to you need to have the possibility of having 100,000 people even be interested in what you have to say, right? If you're talking about a very specific industry within real estate, you might only have a market of 5,000 people. And so what I'm doing, I make broad videos, and that's how I was able to grow. Broad videos that are pretty entertaining. People seem to like them and think they're of quality. I'm educating a little bit, so I think people, I have heard from numerous people that, by following my channel, you get to learn different things. You get to learn about professional athletes, the music business, fake gurus, and so there's an element of newness. And what I'm doing is very targeted for growth. And so if you wanted to grow 100,000, you would have to first start with a niche. There's a channel, Airac, Airrack,
Yeah,
that
of
grew to 1
course.
million in a single year. And now he does kind of Mr. Beast style videos where it's huge entertainment, huge titles, huge thumbnails. And so if you wanted to go that route, you would need to really think about the niche.
One of the things that seems apparent, feel free to debunk it, is you almost need to make YouTube content for the algorithm. At least that's how it seems from afar. So, do you have to play almost the clickbait game is your thumbnail 10 times more important than your content, is the reality of YouTube. You better play that game or you're just not going to get recommended.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan could make 8-minute videos starting tomorrow. We're talking about one of the best directors of all time, someone that knows film, storytelling. But if his thumbnails and titles suck, it's going to be really hard for him to grow. Thumbnails and titles on YouTube matter the absolute most, and the content idea, right? So whatever the title conveys. Look at Mr. Beast. I I created a burger chain. It's like, what kind of YouTube creators can create a national burger chain, right? So it's the idea that really drives it. Thumbnails and titles matter most. They are the only thing that matters until you watch the content, right? You could have the best content, but if no one clicks, if no one's interested, it doesn't matter, which is really unfortunate. That thankfully we're past the unhealthy clickbait where the title would not indicate what's in the video, but a lot of creators get very, very close. Like, oh my gosh, the stock market is crashing, but there's not really any indication that it is, right? So a lot of people are getting close to that line. I personally am not a fan of a lot of what YouTube has become, because some industries do rely on that clickbait. You won't believe what my mom said to me. Like, how do you create urgency, and how do you create clicks in certain, if you're in the entertainment, I'm a comedian and I want to be funny. How do you get someone to click on your stuff? So it resorts to that clickbait nature. Now, thankfully, a lot of creators, the algorithm is so mature now that the good content will prevail. It's just really hard to grow if your stuff isn't good. And so that's the good thing, is that if you do clickbait, you're going to get punished for it.
I had this, I was always kind of uncomfortable with the state of YouTube, because when it comes to music, Spotify's algorithm will not penalize me if they don't like my cover art. They want, stream time. They want to make sure people are saving to their playlist. Apple Music, they're not going to penalize me if I don't have a crazy cover art. Even on Twitter, being like chronological and high quality photos work on Instagram for their algorithm. I guess I was always really uncomfortable with the idea of having to be so extra, having to exaggerate. But that sounds like that's the state of YouTube, if that's correct.
It is. It is, unfortunately. Now, the good thing is good content does prevail. It just does. If you make good stuff for a specific audience, you'll win on YouTube. And I still think there's enough lanes open that if you're good, you can win. Now, the unfortunate nature of YouTube is, because it's so mature, that what is quote unquote good, the barrier is now much higher. So 8 years ago, if you had a $400 camera and you walked around in public saying some jokes, you could get 1 million subscribers. Now, in order to get 1 million, if you wanted to be comedian, entertainment, you got to be pretty darn good. Your editing's got to be real tight.
So if a kid reaches out to you and says, "Hey, you've blown up on YouTube. All I see is your videos on my homepage." Do you have like a blanket piece of advice or a philosophy they should maintain to not get discouraged with the low subscriber count?
I think you always have to focus on the quality of what you're doing. And that relies to any industry, right? If you're a musician and no one cares, well, maybe your music isn't good enough. But when you start making really, really, really good content, music, when you whatever it is, if you can focus on the quality of whatever you're doing, that always prevails. It always will. There's always room for talent.
So I had to ask this. Your most popular series is Why Your Favorite Musicians Are Broke. I found it fascinating. Why do you start that, and what is the reality of the record business from your perspective?
Throughout the past year, what I've done well is I've taken a lot of home run swings, where I've had different ideas. I'm totally comfortable trying something new and having it bomb. And so at that time, I had heard about the music industry, and a lot of what you see isn't what is really going on, and that actually plays into a lot of these fake gurus. What they're showing you isn't the reality behind the scenes. And I thought, maybe the music industry would make for an interesting, big, sexy video. And so I started researching. I was like, there's something here. I think I can tell this story. To me, the music industry is, what side are you on? If you're the musician, you're going to complain about the deals. But if you're the label, you're going to complain about all these artists that don't show up to studio sets on time. They don't do what's asked of them. So I've been listening to an audiobook because I really want to dive into the music industry, because I want to keep telling these stories. And it was about Rihanna, the very quick story. And basically Rihanna came in, she didn't write any of the music. She didn't produce any of it. These were world-class producers making her music. These guys could produce for anyone, but they made a hit. They knew they had a hit on their hands. And basically, they insert Rihanna. She just sings on the track. She doesn't write the lyrics, doesn't produce the song, doesn't do any of the marketing, and she becomes a star. So if you're the label, I think it's actually fair what they do. I mean, sure, when the Justin Bieber blows up and you see how much they're making versus Justin Bieber, it's like, this isn't fair. Well, yeah, it kind of is because they're taking all of the risk.
It almost reminds me of I usually look at record labels from both sides, but I also look at it almost like a startup investor. You might invest
Absolutely.
in 40 different companies, and one may make your portfolio profitable when 39 fail. And that's the reality of a lot of major labels. They're investing in a lot of acts. They're giving out a lot of big advances in budgets, and it's very rare for one to turn profit at a very high level. And people also like a lot. We're artists, so we like to blame the label when certain things go wrong. But yeah, I definitely found that series very interesting because there are two sides to it. It does get very predatory if you don't head into it with the right sense of information, and it's also fascinating because labels are investing in an incredibly risky project, an artist turning profit. So you're not going to be able to go to the bank and ask them for $200,000 to make an album and tell them, hey, it's going to make it all back. So I give them credit in that sense. Where I'm a bit uncomfortable is the young kid from really bad circumstances that hears the word $50,000 advance, signs because they're worried about their mom or they're trying to get out of a really tough situation. For a little bit of perspective, when I was 21, I signed a really, really bad deal to a major record label. Years later, I was lucky enough to get out of that deal, and the advice I got was, let's sign a short-term partnership this time around. But I don't regret the 21-year-old me because I was about to get evicted from my apartment, and when someone told me they were going to send me 50 grand to write some songs, you're going to sign almost immediately. So that's where I get a bit uncomfortable because there's a lot of people really, really struggling, just trying to, pay their mom's rent.
Yeah. Leverage is the most important word, right? If you don't have any leverage, you have nothing. And it's unfortunate, but at the same time, have you ever given someone 50 grand? I haven't. That's not easy to give someone 50 grand that has no proof of success. I mean, sure, they might have 5,000 on Instagram and they've got a couple hits on SoundCloud or Spotify that looks to get a little traction. But you're giving someone 50 grand that you don't know if they're going to show up. Are they going to be able to perform on stage? Are they going to show up and be able to work with producers? It's a very, very, very high risk business.
And luckily there's people like you speaking of it, but on the artist side, there are artists that are being vocal and saying, "Hey, independence is an option here." And I know you covered Russ, and I'm really close with Russ's manager, Milan. He's actually from my hometown. It's fascinating to see how he used leverage to sign a partnership. He is now fully independent. And I guess things are with awareness and with artists being success stories, more artists are going to be proud and maintain independence potentially.
What's really hard though for artists from the outside, because I'm obviously not in the business, is how do you gain leverage, right? How do you gain a following? Well, you still have to pay for your bills. And I can't imagine producing music something like, oh, I'll do it an hour a day and become this worldwide phenomenon. You need to really deep dive into it, become excellent. And unfortunately, in any endeavor, excellence usually takes 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 15 hours a day, right? So how do you balance, how do you gain a following, or how do you gain the skill set while paying for the bills? That's where it becomes challenging, in my opinion.
Usually the best advice I can give and have ever given is sign the shortest term deal you can humanly sign, because if you sign a 1-year deal and it's terrible and everything went wrong, you'll be okay in a year. But
Yeah,
unfortunately,
LeBron James did this in the NBA, where he basically kept signing 2-year deals because he maintained maximum leverage.
that's brilliant because I know my first deal they put on my table would have been like an 8-year contract if finished, and I know it's very industry standard for 5 to 8 years, 5 albums. So best advice, short-term deal, and I'm sure that goes for things beyond the music industry.
Now, one question for you: why don't musicians? This is one thing I've never understood: is why don't musicians leverage the upside of success. So the reason why labels want to give you that 8 years, because in the event that you blow up, they want to have outsized gains on year 3 to 8, where it's like, oh, we hit a home run, we get all the gains. Why not? Why don't artists come to the table and say, hey, look, I'll sign the worst deal possible, but in the event that I reach some threshold, 500,000 album sales or a touring schedule that makes $1 million a year, whatever it is, we hit 50%. So if I'm able to hit a million on tour, we now get 50%. So sure, you get the upside, but I get to share with it.
From my experience, the legal departments are in no way willing to say, "Hey, if you're our success story, we're not
Yeah,
changing this contract." Their business
right,
model is based on that one success paying for the 100 failures, and I know
right.
it. I've definitely tried to say if we hit certain benchmarks, things change, and that was laughed out the room in many senses.
Okay, fair. But I've also wondered, would it benefit the artists if they basically took even less risk up front? If they basically said no advance? How about this? We share in profit in the upswing of success, but I take no advance.
So a big thing that I looked into earlier on was, hey, what if I don't take an advance and we put that all into the album budget or the marketing budget and we try to leverage? The problem is you have to be responsible where if they give me $100,000 advance, I can now be mature enough to say I'm investing 90,000 of this back into XYZ and I have control, it's in my bank account. The moment the record label says, "Hey, we have your money. Don't worry. It's your marketing budget. It's your recording budget." You start sending emails, "Hey guys, we want to shoot this video. Here's the budget." And they say, "It's not going to work." They still, even though they may promise a $100,000 recording budget, they closely control it. They closely approve it. So in my circumstance, I usually put a great majority of my advances wherever they are right back into making the records, creative content, marketing, because the label they're gonna be tight when they can. And hey, I mean, during the pandemic, they've lost a lot of major labels now cannot eat off touring or certain brand deals. Streaming is down in dance music for one. So there's two sides to it, but it's definitely interesting for the artist to have at least the awareness stepping in, because if you go in blind and if you go in excited, you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I do want to do another video on that series. I actually wanted to do it from the label's perspective in the sense of education. Like, let's say, hey, I know a lot of people that watch my videos are very much F the label. They don't like him, but let's at least understand why this business exists. And I think that would be an interesting video. That way people can at least understand why, I've told it from the artist perspective, but let's at least understand the game so you can see both sides. And then you can decide which side you want to take.
Full disclosure, I am signed to a label and my licensing partner is a major label, but there is one thing that is changing that makes me a little uncomfortable with recommending an artist stay independent, and that is the influence slash ownership that major labels have on DSPs like Spotify. So
Yep.
that's a really uncomfortable thing for me, because if you are independent, it is going to be very hard to reach playlists that can make or break your record. It almost doesn't matter how hot your song is. The amount of independent ads on major playlists, 1-2%. Major labels still, they found a way. They ran radio, and when radio died, they said we're going to invest and we're going to gain influence on Spotify and other streaming platforms. So that's another really weird thing where if Spotify didn't have influence from majors, I would say independent all day. Playlists are going to be how you make it, but the labels are smart.
It's relationships. That's the big thing that I think a lot of fans, when they see my videos and they comment like, "Oh yeah, the labels always screw artists in slavery, whatever," but they're also not valuing the relationships that labels have. There's also the a video I'm going to make called the music industry's deepest darkest secret, and that's payola, which like everyone in the business seems uncomfortable to talk about, which is interesting. But all these relationships that they have with the radios, with distributors, with Spotify, you could argue, what are you really after? If you're after the independent route, or if you do kind of want to have the low probability, but the chance of blowing up, you're going to go with the label. It just makes the most sense.
I always find the conversation of payola really uncomfortable. No one wants to talk about it. It's funny because payola for radio play is illegal. But
Yes.
when I've been in the position where we brought a pop record to a US radio promoter, and they said, hey, it's going to cost about $200,000 to promote it in all the states. So payola is illegal for radio play, but you will not touch pop radio without at least $100,000. So it gets very uncomfortable, and
Yeah, how
clearly
about
no.
this? Hey, Peter, you run the label at New York FM 105 too. How about this? I'll take you out to a basketball game. We'll spend, 20 grand on a night. How about that? And then, my new artist.
Yeah.
So is
So,
that illegal? Because that's under the table, basically.
and that's standard practice, I imagine, in a lot of
Yeah.
like pop worlds. I want to wrap up with a big question. I know you from YouTube, but I know you work in tech. Real estate's a big part of your life. And you also care about self development and trying to be your best self. So, if there was any piece of advice you'd give the younger Spencer, what do you wish you would have known before you started this journey?
Stay the path, I guess. I don't really think like that, to be honest. I don't really think in the past. I also I wouldn't really change anything. But yeah, I think that the key is you have to become obsessed and be willing to compromise. I see so many people that are, want some type of success of like, I want to grow a YouTube channel. It's like, okay, are you willing to give up your girlfriend and any free time you have or a social life? No. Well, you can't have both.
See, I agree with you, and I hate to say it in public, but I don't believe growth is very possible with a healthy amount of balance. I do
I
believe
completely agree.
it's uncomfortable to say, but balance has been really tough. Anytime I've had growth or really meaningful moments, it was because I was obsessed and no one could get a hold of me for 5 weeks. So it's uncomfortable, and I hope as I get older, I get closer to balance, and I'm sure you do as well. But on the
Well, I
come
think
up,
you can when you become more naturally good. So like when you first started making music, there was no way you're as good as you are now. Same with YouTube. My stuff was crap. So as you become good, you become more efficient and that opens up time. So you can have the same results with less time.
that's a great point. Balance is, I guess, all of our goals, and I thank you so much, man. I 2020 and 2021 has been so tough. I had no interest in talking to someone that was skeptical for the sake of skepticism. But as I've done research, as I've watched your videos, you are skeptical from a place of compassion. You care about people that are getting preyed on. And I'm just fascinated by it, and I thank you for this call. To celebrate the new podcast, I'm giving away a PlayStation 5 to one of my viewers. All you have to do is like and subscribe. That's it. Full details in the comments. Good luck.